The struggle and legacy of Mexico's indigenous peoples, a nation defined by mixed heritage. Mexico stands as a monumental multi-ethnic nation, home to approximately 130 million people. While the American Indians are the original masters of this land, the modern identity of Mexico is rooted in the concept of the mestizo, those of mixed indigenous and European descent. It is estimated that mestizos account for about 60% of the population, followed by indigenous groups at 20%, and whites at 15%. To prevent racial discrimination and achieve national integration, Mexico avoids racial classifications in its census. Instead, it promotes the ideological concept of the cosmic race, la raza cósmica, which envisions a complete mixed-blood person as the national ideal. This commitment to indigenous roots is reflected in the law. Mexico recognizes 68 indigenous languages as national languages with a status equal to Spanish. However, despite their demographic strength, indigenous communities often face economic challenges, as political and economic power has historically been concentrated within a small white elite. Colonial foundations and the caste system. The history of Mexico differs significantly from that of the United States or Canada. While the northern nations often engaged in policies of ethnic cleansing and massacres during their expansion, Mexico pursued a policy of racial mixing. Following the swift fall of the Aztec Empire in 1521, the Spanish treated the Indians as subjects of the empire rather than targets for elimination. Nevertheless, this did not result in equality. For 3 centuries, Mexico was governed by a rigid racial caste system, Sistema de Castas. Social rank was determined by the fairness of skin and the proportion of European blood. At the top were the Peninsulares, European-born, and Criollos, American-born whites, while Indians and Africans occupied the lowest rungs. Although this system was legally abolished after independence in 1821, the social stratification remained deeply entrenched, leaving the indigenous population as victims of internal colonization for generations. 3. Ancient civilizations and constant resistance. The Mesoamerican region of southern Mexico is one of the world's 6 great cradles of civilization. From the scientific brilliance of the Maya to the dominant superpower of the Aztec Empire, Mexico's history is filled with high-level achievements. This legacy is preserved today in 28 UNESCO World Heritage Sites and vast literature recorded by indigenous leaders using the Spanish alphabet during the colonial era. However, the indigenous story is also one of fierce and persistent resistance. The Spanish and the subsequent Mexican government faced centuries of armed conflict. The Mixten and Chichimeca Wars, early resistance in the north that eventually forced the colonial government to provide material benefits to the tribes to maintain peace. The Pueblo Revolt, 1680, a massive uprising where various tribes united to drive Spanish forces and settlers out of their lands for over a decade. The Comanche-Mexico Wars. For 50 years, the powerful Comanche tribe dominated a territory twice the size of the Korean peninsula. Their raids were so frequent during full moons that the phrase, Comanche Moon, became a popular idiom of the time. The Yaqui Wars, a protracted conflict in northern Mexico that lasted nearly 400 years, only ending in 1929 after the government utilized aerial bombardment. The Mayan independence and the Chiapas conflict. One of the most significant rebellions was the Caste War of Yucatan, 1847 to 1901. After decades of abuse on sugarcane plantations, the Maya rose up and occupied most of the peninsula, establishing an independent state recognized by Britain. It took over 50 years and tens of thousands of lives before the Mexican army regained control, though skirmishes continued until the 1930s. In modern history, the struggle transitioned to the Chiapas conflict in 1994. Prompted by the signing of NAFTA and the privatization of communal lands, ejidos, the Zapatista Army of National Liberation, EZLN, launched a rebellion. Led by Subcomandante Marcos, the group used the internet and global media to advocate for libertarian socialism and indigenous rights. Recognizing the rebels as activists rather than terrorists, the Mexican government moved toward dialogue. This led to the San Andrés Accords, allowing indigenous communities in Chiapas to reclaim their land, teach their own languages, and manage their own community institutions. Versus indigenous pride and the path forward. The resilience of the indigenous spirit is best embodied by Benito Juárez, Mexico's first indigenous president. Born into a Zapotec family, Juarez did not speak Spanish until his teens, yet he rose to become the nation's most respected leader. His philosophy, among individuals, as among nations, respect for the rights of others is peace, remains a cornerstone of Mexican identity. Today, the influence of indigenous culture is celebrated globally through the works of artists like Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. With 9 million people still speaking native languages, Mexico continues to honor its heritage. The transition from the rigid caste systems of the past to the recognition of linguistic rights in 2003 marks a slow but steady journey toward a nation that truly respects its original masters.